Good morning. And this morning I am speaking to Gavin Luck-Jones, who is now hopefully I'll say this right, a kinesiologist. Did I get that right?
So, as a kinesiologist, but to be more precise, I'm a systematic kinesiologist because there are other branches of kinesiology out there. So, systematic kinesiology is pretty much exactly a bit more developed than applied kinesiology. Applied kinesiology is the original form of kinesiology, which came from a man called George Goodhart, who was a chiropractor. And so applied kinesiology you can only practice if you're a doctor. But the man who brought it over to the UK, there was no regulations over here, so you don't have to be a doctor to practice kinesiology. However, from that, so that's systematic kinesiology, was the first kinesiology here. From that, other people have changed bits and pieces and developed their own kinesiologies, which, some of it's all right, but some of it's a bit dodgy, I would say. So I do the authentic original kinesiology.
Real. Okay. Wow. So that was a lot of information, and people are like, "Oh my goodness, what are they talking about?" Well, I think probably then, let's just go back a bit to actually your story, because that will, I think, lead well into actually why you went in this direction of going to investigate what kinesiology was and then becoming a practitioner. So tell me about a little bit what happened to you in your life, please.
So I mean, there's several strands to it, really. So as a child, I was always quite. I always looked very tired. I always looked quite withdrawn, and I had loads of comments from teachers, people's parents, anyone that I'd meet really would just comment on how tired I looked, which was great for my self-esteem. And We got to the bottom of that. It took a long process. Having those sort of comments being made it did actually affect my emotional health in a huge way. I kind of laugh at it now, but when I actually think about it and put myself back into that boy, um, it affected me in a huge way. And then so I found it hard to kind of be part of community with other people, and it kind of made me feel, I guess, anxious, depressed. Didn't really know how to be part of a group of people. Although lots of people enjoyed having me around, I didn't really feel kind of like I fitted in. So another thing that was going on is I used to play ice hockey, and I was doing really well, but I was born with a spinal injury, and that spinal injury got worse and worse around the age of 13, 14, 15. And that was kind of a crucial age for getting into the right teams, going to different championships and things like that. So I couldn't really complete my ice hockey career or wherever it would have taken me because of that spinal injury. So there was two kind of health issues going, I guess maybe three if you consider the emotional health issue going on. So that spinal injury kind of got worse, and I was put onto painkillers, and that kind of quickly accelerated from, cocodamol up to tramadol, oxycodone, and eventually fentanyl. And fentanyl is like 100 times, I think 50 or 100 times stronger than heroin. And there was an element, I would say, of, yeah, it did great for my pain, but it did also help with the kind of emotional side of things. So it was a bit of self-medicating, but also good for my physical pain as well. However, I probably didn't, maybe I was naive at the time. I didn't realize how addictive fentanyl is. So that was going on. And then also, I had my best friend when I was age 15. My best friend, I got to 18, and he died in suspicious circumstances. So that sent me into a bit of depression, really. If I was with him like every day, nearly every day, and then there was a couple of weeks when I wasn't with him, and then he turned up dead, which kind of really affected me in a big way. And then I was scouted to be a fashion model, and I was like age 17, 18 at the time. And yeah, you'd think it would do a lot for your self-esteem, but I think it kind of made it even worse, because you're kind of being judged for what you look like, not kind of who you are. So that was going on as well. And then wanted to get to the bottom of what was going on with my physical health issues. So the spinal issue, or the pain issue, and the tiredness issue. So I actually went to see a kinesiologist, and after one session, I found it really fascinating, and I signed up to do a course. This was in 2009, and I did a foundation course. I didn't go on to become a kinesiologist because I was traveling the world working, so it wasn't really the right situation for me to be in. So then I remember in that foundation course, though, the kinesiologist that was training me said to me, there's probably something going on with your thyroid and something going on with your pituitary gland based on the testing that he'd done. And then a couple of years later, another of my friends died, and that sent me into a even more depressive state. And at that same time, I was going to different doctors, and went private as well to see rheumatologists, endocrinologists, all those different things to see what was going with these tiredness things. And uh, turned out there was something wrong with my thyroid and my pituitary gland. So the kinesiologist was right.
Wow.
So I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and Addison's disease, which Addison's disease can be life-threatening, and hypothyroidism, I guess, can be as well, but not as much as Addison's disease. So I was told to take this medication for the rest of my life. I didn't want to do that. I was kind of skipped out a bit. That I went to live in Japan for work, and I was unable to take the fentanyl with me at the time. I was only about 21 at the time, so I decided I would. And what was happening as well is I was taking all these painkillers, and no matter how many painkillers I took, I was just still in so much pain, and the pain had kind of gone down from my back down to my legs. And what I realized in the time when I put down the fentanyl, is that that was just withdrawal symptoms. And because you hear about like heroin addicts that they kind of, it's called like clucking, isn't it? So your head goes forward and then your legs kind of twitching. And that was just, so what was happening was actually I was taking this medication and leaving maybe too much gap between it, and then it was causing a physical reaction, which I thought was because of my back I was having this pain, but it was actually just because of the medication. So I stopped taking the medication, went through 10 days of absolute hell where you feel like your body's being torn apart, emotionally and physically. And then suddenly one day it just stops. And then I was off to Japan and did some work out there. But then jumping ahead again, when I was diagnosed with Addison's and hypothyroidism, at this time, I was still working around the world, but what happened was, I guess the emotional effects of things is that I decided to stop doing that, and I decided I'm going to volunteer in soup kitchens, homeless shelters, bring my feet down to earth. And in this time, I was meeting people who were on various different sorts of medication, pain stuff, but also emotional antidepressants and things like that. And it made me just realize how this is kind of just a machine. The NHS just pumps out different pharmaceutical drugs to cure any symptom. It doesn't actually get to the root cause of the problem. So began on my quest of, I don't want to take medication. I don't want to be funding the pharmaceutical industry for the rest of my life, which is what you're told to with these illnesses. So I looked around for different therapies, and the one that I kept coming back to was kinesiology. Went back to see a different kinesiologist, and it probably only took about 3 months, I would say, I had already changed the way I was living, but went to had different tests done through kinesiology, different techniques done on me, nutrition, uh, working with my emotional issues as well, cutting out different foods, and all based on like testing, which is what kinesiology is. We use muscle testing to get into the body rather than guessing, which is exactly what this kinesiologist was doing. When I started doing this, I went to get blood tests, and I had like the cortisol test and the thyroid test, and my levels were really low. And they said like it's never going to work. You're just going to have to take these medications for the rest of your life. Went back to see the kinesiologist, and 3 months later, had the same blood test done. And I was just so positive that I knew something had changed because I'd stopped taking the medication, not under the kinesiologist's advice, but just on my own merit, just
Yeah.
decided I'm going to stop, gradually reduce this medication. And went in, so I hadn't been taking the medication, had the blood test done, and the blood test came back absolutely fine. So what they told me would never ever going to work, and if I stopped taking the medication, I would die. Um, it was cured with kinesiology. Oh, I don't think you're allowed to say cured, but I went in to have a consultation with this endocrinologist, and she was like, "Yeah, the levels are fine, so you must be on the right amount of medication then." And I said, "I'm not taking the medication." She said, "Well, what have you done?" And I explained, and she wasn't really that interested, because they're kind of taught, brainwashed into thinking their ways are the only way. So
Exactly.
yeah, so I carried on with kinesiology, and because of having that kind of miracle, really, I thought I need to get back in because I was still doing the work and working with people on different medication. And where I was working, I was trying to introduce natural ways of living, but when you're working under a manager who they've got certain ways of doing things, you can't really do that much. So I started looking again for maybe an alternative therapy that I could do. And I kept coming across my old kinesiology book, and just decided that I'm going to go for it this time and go the full way. And I have done everything. Well, I am one of the highest trained kinesiologists in the UK. So I definitely have gone the full way. So that's quite a long-winded answer, and it kind of went back and forwards. But there's been a lot to my life, I guess. It's gone in different ways, but yeah, I'm in the right place where I am now, helping lots of people through therapy that changed my life.
Thank you for sharing that because I asked you there to be incredibly vulnerable with the audience, and it will have helped, I think, so many people to know that, even though you were given these life-changing, life-altering diagnoses, I never get the English right, you actually took on your own sort of patient responsibility, and you decided then actually you wanted to go your own path. And that's something that's very, very brave, very, very scary. But actually, I think when you know in your heart, your gut, that actually you want to have a different life and you want to be in control of what you take and how you live, that can be hugely empowering. And just to say, I'm not medically trained. We don't encourage anyone to come off medication without consultation with their doctors or anything. However, I do know people other than yourself who have taken that brave step of saying, actually, I don't want to take this, and gone on alternative therapies, and who are doing quite well. So I think, yeah, it remains to be seen. But so quite obviously that's inspired you to go into a career in kinesiology. But can you explain what it is to someone who not maybe not be familiar with the term?
Yeah, so kinesiology, the simplest way of defining it is the science of testing muscles to create balance within the body. And so just a simple sentence, and then you can unpack that further than that because it's not just testing muscles, but testing muscles enables us to communicate and evaluate the muscle responses via the central nervous system. So we can see dysfunction going on via a muscle test, and yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. And when you say dysfunction, by that, just not.
So if something's not operating as it should be, yeah, so if it's not functioning properly, then it will be picked up in a muscle test. So that could be nutritional deficiencies, organ problems. That could be pain going on, food sensitivities, uh, loads of other things, hormone problems, and yeah, loads of other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how does it contribute to the healing process, both physically and mentally, would you say?
So, I would say the kinesiology is not a healing practice. So, I am not a healer. I've not healed anyone, right? So, I just use kinesiology, and kinesiology, what it does is open up pathways within the body for the body to heal itself. The body is a natural healing, um, what do you call machine?
Mm.
Uh, Sometimes that healing ability gets blocked, and it's because of stress. And kinesiologists find stress within the body through muscle testing, and then we diffuse that stress. And we diffuse that stress using what we call the MCPE approach. So MCPE, M is for mental, so your grief, your worry, your cares, your anxieties, all of your emotions. The C is for chemical, so we're not talking about pharmaceutical drugs, talking about the chemistry of your body. And that might be food sensitivities, allergies, any pathogens within the body. Then we got the physical side of things. So we'll work on your bones, your ligaments, your muscles, anything that's physical. And then we've got the electrical side of things. As I mentioned in the talk the other day, we are electrical beings, and sometimes that electricity in our body, our nervous system gets out of kilter, and then we can help to find where the stress is in that electrical system and put it back into balance.
Brilliant. Yes. And so the different techniques or approaches used in kinesiology. Now, I was lucky enough to come and actually have a meeting with you, and I have to say, I because when you're in a process, you don't fully take on actually the kind of the, and I'm going to say this word, don't please forgive me, the magic of what you do. But there was a lot of sort of arms in the air, legs in the air, you doing various things. Tell me a bit about how all that works.
Okay, so there's loads of different muscle tests, right? But more specifically, there's 42 muscle tests in the body. Those 42 muscles relate to 12 plus 2, so 14 meridians in the body. And those meridians are the same, almost all of them are the same as different organs within the body. So, for instance, if you had a problem with your liver, then there are two muscles associated with the liver, and that is the rhomboids and the pectoralis major sternum. So, what we would do is all of these muscles within our body, they act independently for a very short amount of times, and so what muscles do is muscle groups tend to work together. So what you have to do in order to make that muscle work independently is isolate it from any other muscle. So you have to put it in an exact specific position and press really lightly. Lots of people I see press really hard and they're not getting accurate responses. So so pectoralis major sternal, for example, so you would have your hand in the air as if you're doing backstroke. Then I would push very lightly just above your wrist, and I would push backwards as if you're doing backstroke. And then what that would do is if it was weak, or weak is kind of the wrong word because it's not a strength competition. We're not in the gym or anything, and I'm pressing very, very lightly. But what happens is if there's an imbalance, it'll unlock. So what you will feel sometimes is if there's no imbalance there, it will just be really easy to hold in position. If it's not, I can literally put it down with my little finger.
Mm.
And then I'll be able to tell that there's an imbalance in that area. Now, some people might come in, I will just keep using the liver. So some people might come in saying, I've got a problem with the liver. And I will test the muscles associated with the liver, and it will seem like it's balanced. But that's because there's another area that needs to be addressed first. And that might be contributing to that. So yeah, so there's 42 muscles in the body that we go to, and some are in the legs, some are in the arms, some are in the neck, and you've got two muscles that link to the small intestine, you've got three muscles linked to the large intestine, And that's how we work with the body, how we get into the body through different muscle tests. There is also a way that we look at it's like a universal test almost, where it's just what we call a strong indicator muscle. So we find a muscle that is strong and it does what we call turning off. So all muscles have to test strong, but you have to be able to turn it off. And a way that we can turn this off is by putting a magnet onto the muscle, and this will weaken the muscle. If it doesn't, it suggests it's actually weak. So then what we can do with that strong indicator muscle is we can touch different areas of the body associated with things such as neurotransmitters, hormones, nutrition, and we will find weakness in that way. So its possibilities are quite endless, really.
Mm. And one thing you do while you're doing this muscle testing is you actually use little vials of different things, don't you? There was some Bach's flower remedies, and can you tell me a little bit how those kind of come into this testing process?
Yeah. So you may have been to a health food shop and either known what you were looking for or asked for some of the help. And they would have said, oh, this one's really good for whatever you've come in for. Or you maybe have looked on the internet and thought and typed in your issue and seen that other people have tried milk thistle, for example, and you try milk thistle and you don't really get any benefit, or you get it from a different brand, and so therefore you're not getting the same benefits. What we do is I've got hundreds of different vials or pots of nutrition, which if I find a muscle that unlocks, I then put one of these little vials of nutrition around the neck area, which is associated with the digestive system because we swallow, it goes down on, not down our neck, but it goes through the tubes within our neck. It also stimulates the nerves associated with smelling and taste, which is to do with digestion. Well, it's the first bit of digestion, really, is before we've actually eaten it. And then what happens is if that nutrition is relevant to you, if it will help the imbalance that we've found, it will change the muscle to go strong or lock. If it doesn't make the change, then that's not the nutrition you need. So I have people coming in and they may have had digestive issues and they say they've just come from the health food shop and they bring in some of their nutrition that they've got in home. They say, my friend told me to take this, or I've got this in my cupboard. We can then find the weak muscle, unlocked muscle associated with our digestive system, put the nutrition in that they've brought in, and often it won't actually be what they need. So essentially, people are just throwing money down the drain.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's not to say that nutrition isn't good. It might be good another time. It might be that. So some people might they've been told they've got candida, and so you think, oh, I'll take caprylic acid. Caprylic acid is really good for candida. So they've gone out and bought caprylic acid. I've tested their muscles associated with their digestion, put the caprylic acid on their body, and it doesn't strengthen. What they might need is they might need some probiotics, for example, and we put that on their body and it makes the muscle go strong or lock, and that's what they need. So kinesiology is a way of finding a bespoke package of nutrition that's actually going to help. And what people may find as well, because I get people coming in, there's a little test that we do which is takes 2 seconds and there's no we don't have to take blood from you or stool samples. We can check you for parasites.
Mm.
Loads of people have parasites. We all have parasites. It's just we don't want to have an imbalance of parasites. So loads of people I've seen, they say, I was diagnosed with parasites and they never went away. I had them for years, or I had to take this, and And people come to me, I check them for parasites. If they've got parasites, we find the nutrition using muscle testing. They take that supplement, and the next time I see them, they've gone. So how on earth, this is what I don't understand, is how on earth have they've gone for a test with a doctor, they've got parasites, they've taken whatever, and they've had them for years and they just won't go away. How come with kinesiology they can go away in like one session? Because what can often happen is, well, for one thing, we're not just giving nutrition in terms to take it, we're also working on their body, and we're working with the emotions. Because parasites, if you think what a parasite is, it's something that's taking your energy, taking your food. So there's an emotional connection with that. If you think a parasite in real life is someone in your life that's taking your energy and zapping your energy. So it might be that you need to get rid of that, or it might be a past experience from that same emotion, but a past experience that you haven't processed properly. And if you haven't processed properly, your energy system is actually attracting parasites if you
Oh,
haven't allowed your body to process a past emotional experience. So what can happen is there's for parasites, you might need black walnut, you might need artemisia, you might need what else? Grapefruit, lots of different things. But what people often do is they go, "I've got parasites, I better take this because the internet told me to take this, or the woman in the health shop said to take this." And what can actually happen is the parasites go, "I see what you're doing here. You're trying to get rid of me." And so what they do is then they bury themselves in even more, and then they
oh,
might go to a different place. So what you need to do is you need to find the exact specific nutrition that they need that will get rid of them. And you can't do that without muscle testing. It's just a total gamble. And so people that have come to see me, they've had parasites, they've taken this and they've buried in even further. They've multiplied even more. So, that's one way that we use nutrition. Emotionally, because what we may do is, let's just think about there's three muscles associated with your large intestine. So we have a pandemic, let's say, of digestive issues. So many people are constipated, so many people have diarrhea, which is actually kind of extreme constipation. It's just finding ways of getting out in other ways. And so we've got three muscles associated with that. Now, we work with like the Chinese medicine, we're East meets West. So it is very scientific. But we also take things from Eastern medicine, so like Chinese traditional medicine, who associate different emotions with different organs of the body. So if we're thinking large intestine, that's associated with grief, but it's also associated with letting go, holding on to things. And when we find one of the muscles associated with large intestine being weak, we can also retest that muscle and get someone to think of an emotion that they're going through right now. So perhaps they're struggling to let go of a past relationship, or perhaps they're running away from a boss at work or a deadline or something like that. And if that emotion is associated with the problem with the large intestine, that muscle will go from weak to strong. That doesn't mean the emotion is really good for it. It just, we're always looking for change. So what we can do is use back flower remedies. Back flower remedies are really good for emotions, is then we can put those on the body as well. And rather than guessing, because there's books, there's things on the internet about back flowers and what they're good for. And so taking, for example, aspen is a fear of, I can't remember which one is which. Aspen and mimulus are both about fear. So you might think, oh, I'm worried about the future, I need one of these. So you go and buy them both. However, you might not need that one at all. It's the same principle as with the nutrition that I was talking about. It might be that you need something else, and we can find this out through muscle testing. Muscle testing is literally just a way of communicating with your central nervous system, because it's almost like, when if you were to put your hand on a hot stove, right, there's nervous impulses in your hand, and those nervous impulses would travel up your brain, and they'd go check around the body. Is this good? Is this all right? Is this okay to have your hand there? Within a split second. And then whatever comes back, that goes back to the brain and then back to the hand, and then your hand moves away. So what we're doing is we're going again, we've found the muscle that's unlocked, we put the nutrition on, and then we're testing the muscle again. And then this is sending a communication, a nervous impulse to the brain. So we're using the electricity of the body, and then the body is checking to see if it's okay, and then the muscle will be strong or weak.
Brilliant.
There's also, though, it works with your electromagnetic aura. So all living beings have an electromagnetic field, and if so when you put one thing in each other's electromagnetic field, like a magnet, you see one, it'll repel or attract. So when we put nutrition or bat flowers on the body, if that electromagnetic field repels or attracts to us, it will reveal itself in the muscle test. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, and
I know that I'm probably going a bit in depth, maybe.
oh no, it's absolutely fantastic. And when you were saying about these supplements, I remember you saying before I came to see you, just, bring me a list of the things that you're taking. And I was like, yeah, yeah. And I have these three drawers of supplements, and some of them are quite old, some of them are quite new. And I thought, well, I'll just take the ones that I'm kind of using at the second. But you kind of realize that, oh my goodness, as someone who's ill, you're so desperate to find things to support you, and you're probably low income because you might not be working. Actually, going into the world of trying to find things by yourself is not only risky in terms of they might be counteractive to what you've got, but
Yeah.
you'll be probably, unfortunately, wasting money because then,
Yeah, and then if you're putting things into your body as well, your body needs to, if your body doesn't need them, your
yeah,
body needs to process them and get them out of your system. So you're actually causing your body to do even more work.
yeah,
So people say, "Oh, kinesio," they call me up and they ask me how much treatment is, and I say, whatever it is, and they might think it's expensive, but at the end of the day, you're going to save money in the long run. Um, and then some people, they've got emotional issues, they've got dietary issues, and they've got physical issues, and you could go and see four separate practitioners that do those four areas, the MCP areas I talked about, and that'll end up costing you more. And then, so the emotional techniques we actually have as well. I don't, like I said the other day, I'm not knocking any other therapy,
mhm,
uh, but we can remove trauma from your body, like in a technique. It doesn't need to be a long, drawn out process. And sometimes the body remembers everything. So there's that book, The Body Keeps Score, about trauma that we hold within our body. If something happened to you when you were 10 and you compartmentalized it, and so it's almost like another version of yourself that happened to, because it's like, and this is how, not to get too deep into things, but there's a thing called trauma-based mind control, right? So when people are traumatized, they split personalities, right? And we do this on a we can do this on a smaller scale. So we hide things in boxes, I like to say. So we put things in boxes, we put a lid on it, and it never happened to us. We don't have to deal with it, and we forget about it. But your body remembers, your subconscious remembers, and your subconscious is 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious. So sometimes regarding emotions, so we can take a strong muscle, and then we can just say emotions, or like grief, anxiety. We can go through that list, and sometimes you say, "Oh, the muscle goes weak," and you say, "Oh, have you got problems in this area?" And people are, "No, I don't," but that's because they don't kind of realize, and it's held within their subconscious, but also they don't realize. And then once we've done the test, things come back to them. Anyway, digressing. So what we can do is with emotional techniques, so we can do this thing called past age recession, or past trauma recall, where someone is coming in with anxiety, or they're coming in with whatever's triggering them to have some sort of emotional response. And they've thought for their whole life that, oh, this is because of what happened when I was 18. So something happened when I was 18, and that causes me to recoil, um, right, act out in some sort of way because of what happened when I was 18. So what they do, they say, I need to get this sorted. So I'm going to go to a counselor and we're going to talk about what happened when I was 18 for session after session after session after session. And they never really get to the bottom. It does help in some sort of way or another, but because it actually didn't start when you were 18, it started when you were 10. But because you compartmentalized it, it didn't happen to you. It's almost like you've forgotten. So what we can do, and this has happened so many times, is that we can test to see when something first happened. And it's almost like a light switch goes on when we get to that age where that past trauma had happened, and it can be extremely cathartic, powerful experience. And then when we find it, we can deal with it in a necessary way to get it out of the body, which means sometimes it also has a knock-on effect to all the other things that happened because of that event. So what happened when you were 18 was a result of what happened when you were 10. But if we deal with the issue that happened when you were 10, we've dealt with the other issue that happened when you were 18 and further on. So you don't need to go to session after session after session. And some people, I've spoken to some people about that, and they say, but isn't that cheating? Well, I'd rather get rid of it quicker, really, and I'd rather not have to talk about things over and over again.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, so that's just one thing. I don't know how I ended up talking about that, but
That's fantastic. And it's interesting that anyone would think that actually managing to reduce or relieve yourself of any sort of emotional or physical challenge would be a negative if you achieved it quicker.
yeah,
It's mad.
exactly.
And oh gosh, yeah, incredible. Um, and obviously your specialism is with kinesiology, but does it integrate with other healing modalities well? Or I mean, how
Yeah, I when I someone said so kinesiology sort of actually just borrows things from everywhere else, really. The only the thing,
nicely.
yeah, yeah. So we borrow it, and then what we do is we add a bit of muscle testing in there as well. So there was something I saw someone did this thing called categories, and they're a chiropractor, and categories is to do with posture, structure, your hips, your shoulders, and there's three different categories, and it's the way your stand is. I won't go into it too much, but that's a chiropractic technique, and they would examine the body by, I don't know, I'm not a chiropractor, but I think by touching, feeling, observing. Whereas we'd skip all that, and then we do a bit of that, but we'd skip it and we use muscle testing to find, rather than, because even when you're looking at something and when you're touching something, it's still guesswork, really. I'd rather do use the technique and use the muscle testing on top of that to find where it really comes from. So can it integrate with other therapies? Yeah, I mean, it would be. I've trained other people of like reflexologists, acupuncturists, counselors, and yeah, of course it can get to the problem quicker. It can get to the root cause quicker. So it might be that someone is a counselor, and they've got like almost like the example I was talking about. So someone's coming in and they've got an emotional issue going on. Well, you can muscle test to find out what we actually need to talk about today. A nutritionist, if they're working in a health food shop, could give advice, but then they could say, how about, look, I've got these three magnesiums. I think they will be really helpful for you. But what we can do, if you want to just take a seat or lie down here, we can just check. Um, so
Amazing.
so things like that. And then so that's kind of with, so I've explained emotion. So an emotional practitioner could use muscle testing to find out what emotion needs to be talked through or where it came from. Uh, and then we think about chemically or biochemically. So a nutritionist could use it to find out what nutrition they need. And then, and we talked about physical. So with this thing called categories, or so people have knee problems, ankle problems. So a physiotherapist might work on those areas, but it might be that the problem is actually coming from another area. So you could use muscle testing to find out where the pain is actually originating from. And also like energy healers, for example. So uh, I mean, a lot of energy here is work on intuition. I think a lot of therapists work on intuition, uh, but we'd have techniques where we work with auras of the body, the electromagnetic field, where we find holes in the aura, what we call like leaks, aura leaks, and we can muscle test to find where that leak is, and then spend more time on that area rather than going all around the body where sometimes it might not be needed. So yeah, so it can integrate with everything, just as well as it's integrated itself into kinesiology.
Incredible. Incredible. Loving it, loving it, loving it. And what advice would you give to someone considering kinesiology for their health concern? I mean, how?
Well, I'm extremely biased, but I mean, just give it a go. I mean, it's very very holistic. So I I get people coming in with whatever issues they've got, and we end up talking about their childhood and their parents. So it can be it's more than just, I think some people don't really, because it's such kind of unknown, people don't know what they're getting themselves in for. So you might come in with a pain issue, and I'm going to tell you to stop eating these sorts of things. And you're going to think, what's the connection with that? Or you've got problems with your digestion, and I'm talking about your issues with your mum, and you think, well, why is that connected? Well, it's all connected. All of these things are connected. Like I talked about already, the MCPE thing, everything, all conditions have a component of the mental, the chemical, the physical, and the electrical,
Mm,
energetic. So it is truly holistic, and I think in the long run, as we've talked about, you will end up saving money because it's fast, it's effective, it's reliable. So I see, well, kinesiology it does help with symptoms. It gets rid of your symptoms by getting to the root cause, and it is a preventative healthcare because we can find out different small imbalances in the body before they end up going into compensations and then disease. But ideally, I don't want to see you for 18 years. I don't want to see you for a year. It should be a lot quicker than that. So when I see sometimes that I had someone ring me one time about, and they told me that they'd gone to see this other person, a different therapy. And I said, "Oh, how long have you been seeing them for?" And they said, 18 years.
oh my goodness.
And I was like, and they were like, they're such an amazing practitioner. And like, 18 years is a long time. Like, I mean, I don't know what, maybe they were just going for general maintenance, but like essentially I want to get you your symptoms sorted, find the root cause, and almost send you on your way. But if you want to come back for preventative stuff, that's great as well. But it's because it's so kind of full on involved, and addresses every aspect of health,
Mm,
you're going to get better results,
gosh.
because each modality out there that deals solely with, like, so physiotherapy, mainly physical, they may talk to you about stuff going on in your life. They may recommend supplements. They may recommend stop eating certain things, but a lot of them don't. And they're definitely not going to be muscle testing to find out where they should be working. So, but they have great results. If they didn't have great results, physiotherapists wouldn't exist anymore, right? Same with all other therapists. They have great results, and if they're working with one realm of the MCP thing, then imagine working with two. So imagine being that osteopath who also recommends taking calcium, magnesium, glucosamine, and all those things. You're going to be a better osteopath. Imagine being that osteopath that also talks to you about the stress going on in your life, where you're going to have even better results.
Yeah.
And imagine if you were that osteopath who is also doing muscle testing to find out where they need to work, you're going to have even better results. And so that's why kinesiology is even better and quicker and faster, because it does that.
Bringing them all together and integrating them.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and a little smile came to my face because for a long time I was looking at people who are doing alternative therapy. I was thinking they're just stacking up the qualifications in the different areas. Could they not commit to one? But of course, what they were probably trying to do was cover all the bases of what could be causing someone's challenge. And just coming back to supplements, another thing that you've mentioned to me is not all supplements are equal. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it can, so sometimes, for example, someone will come in, the supplement will come up, and it's got, or let's just say, slippery elm comes up often. I've got about 4 or 5 different slippery elms, and someone will say, "Oh, I've got some of this slippery elm, some slippery elm at home," and it's like, "Well, I haven't tested that. It might be fine, but I don't know because I haven't tested it." But just to give you an example, I've got 5 slippery elms here, and I'm going to put them all on your body, and only 2 of those 5 turn out as testing, let's say positive, um, which means that there's a likelihood if you go home and take the slippery elm, you're not going to have the effect that we want, and therefore that's going to look bad on me. But it's not me. It's not the problem. It's not my problem. But there's also a technique that we do, and it's very simple, but it's absolute gold dust, and it's probably worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. We sell it for £1,295 if you do the foundation course. But what it does is it's something called priority. So I've just said about five slippery elms, but 2 of them made that muscle go strong. So we've if we say someone's coming with a digestive issue, so we think small intestine. We test the 2 muscles of the small intestine. One of them is weak. We then put on 5 different slippery elms. 2 of those 5 slippery elms make that muscle go strong. I then do what we call priority finger mode, which is the gold dust, and then that makes one of the slippery elms turns that muscle weak, because we're always looking for change, like a light switch. We're always switching off, on, off, on. You can't turn a light switch on if it's already on.
Yeah.
So that means out of those 2 slippery elms that were really good, only one of them that there was priority is the one you need to take, and you'll get the best result from that. So that's another thing that other people obviously don't do. But on another level, different supplements have different sources of their product. Different supplements have different content, quantities. So, uh, for example, there's a supplement called Bowel Build, and it contains a bit of zinc. And it might be that you come in and you've got something like ulcerative colitis. Actually, I wouldn't recommend it for that, but you had some sort of bowel issue. Bowel build comes up, zinc comes up. So what someone might do is they look on the internet as they're about to buy it, and they'll say, "Oh, bowel build's got zinc in it," or whatever. Yeah, bowel build's got zinc in it, and they go, "Oh, I won't even bother buying the zinc then because it's got zinc in it." Well, the bowel build's got barely any zinc in it. It's just on there because it has to say it's in there, but it's barely anything in there. So you won't get the
No.
desired effect if you don't get the other one on top. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's also a certain brand that never seems to test out because they've been bought by I think they've been bought by a weapons company, um, by the Carlyle Group. I think they were bought out by. So I would always be wary of those. There's certain brands that I use because I just believe in those brands. I know more about them. I know about their ethics and the way they conduct their business. But that's not to say that you can bring in a supplement from wherever you've got it from, and it might be the one you need.
Brilliant. Yes, no, and I think possibly in the podcast notes, be interesting maybe to put in sort of a few brands you might recommend that people actually, if they're going to go down that path, look at rather than going for others. Obviously, the most logical thing is to come and see you or one of the people that you've trained first before you go down the path of buying something. But I
Yeah.
think it's scary that people are buying things which are often filled with fillers and things. So then what they're putting into the body is actually making it a more toxic, challenging place. Um, so, well, I mean, it's end of the podcast. This is what one needs to do if you want to get the healing process started. But can you do this to yourself? That's the next thing is, can it be a self-care tool?
So yeah, so there's a debate about whether you can test yourself, really. The people I've trained with would say no. And there's an element you could. I think it would be a bit inaccurate. However, I don't think it's impossible, but there's always going to be an element of you're kind of getting in the way.
Yes.
Um, but that said, I mean, you can definitely do so. What we do is to correct an issue. There's the nutritional side, but that's only that's one quarter of it. So we correct things in the MCPE way. So we'll talk about your emotions, we'll use emotional techniques, we might use back flowers, but we also, and we do the nutrition, but we also do the physical stuff, which is rubbing areas of your body. So the lymphatic system of the body is what's called the river of health. It's 4 times as big as your circulatory system, but it's got no pump. It doesn't pump. It needs to pump the lymph around the body, but it doesn't have a pump. So the way the lymph gets around the body is movement. And so what we do, and lymph is your cleansing system. It's your immune system. It kind of gets rid of any toxins out of the body. So when we're not moving, or for whatever other reason, it can become stagnant and clogged up. And so what we do is each muscle is associated with a different area of lymph. Now you could rub all the lymph in your body. That's going to take a long time. So we find the area that needs that work, and then we rub that area. So, for example, I've talked about the pectoralis major sternal link to your liver. So the lymphatic point with that is on the right side. So that looks like my left side, but I am touching my right side. It's not, so this side, it looks like my right side, but it's kind of just under where, if or where a bra line would be, rib 5 and 6 on the right hand side is the lymphatic areas for the pectoralis major sternum. So you can rub that all you want every day, and that will help cleanse the liver, and it will help to detoxify the liver. There is also, I'm just going to stay with the liver. So there is neurovascular points. So what we do is we stimulate blood flow to an area on the head, which also stimulates blood flow to the organ that we're working on and the muscle that we're working on. And the liver is, so hairline here. So 2 fingers, like a plus and a minus, as if we're like recharging the body with a battery, just here. And then what we will do, so liver is often associated with anger, resentment, frustration, things like that. Doesn't always have to be, it can just be general stress. And then what we do is we hold acupressure points on the body. So there's different acupressure points linked to the different meridians. So then we would hold those points, which would stimulate energy flow through that pathway and also to the organ and to that muscle it's associated with. And then there's also the meridian line. So we flush the meridian. So we start from the beginning to the end, and we go up and down, which stimulates energy flow to the muscle and the organ. So when we've done all that, is how you would then, after that, you would test that same muscle and it'd be strong, which is an amazing indicator of something's happened, something's been done here. Whereas you might go somewhere else and they'll say, yeah, we've done the work we need to do. It's like, well, where's the proof? How can you show me that something has been done? And that is an indicator. I can't remember what the actual question was though.
Oh no, that was brilliant because I was hoping we'd get onto the lymphatic system, but yes,
Okay.
yes, there are parts of what you can give to someone, like lymphatic massage, that they can do by themselves.
Oh yeah. So can you do things by yourself? So you can do all that. So once you learn those different places, you can do all those things on yourself. The muscle testing might be a bit inaccurate, but I mean, what I do most days is I go through all the lymphatic points on my body. I'll rub them, and usually, if it's painful, that means it's so I get clients coming in, and then I'm rubbing a certain point. Like, oh, it's really painful. It's like That's all right. Yeah, you haven't come for a massage. Like it's going to be, it might be a bit painful, and that's just a good sign that
Yeah.
we're cleansing and separating out the lymph. And then I will hold the neurovascular points on the head and maybe run the meridians. So yeah, you can do those parts for yourself, but you need to know them before you can do them. Yeah,
Absolutely, robbing the wrong bit.
yeah.
How do you see the future of kinesiology evolving in the field of holistic health and wellness?
So I think the reason it's not as well known is that in America, because only doctors can do it, which kind of limits it a bit, and America is like almost like the center of the world. Um, and also, I think maybe because it's so effective. I think it's not an easy thing to do. It's there's a lot to remember, and it's quite full on.
Oh,
So sometimes I'm like the amount of information I'm storing in my head while I'm turning around. I've done the muscle test and everything, and I'm turning around trying to think of the nutrition while you're telling me about your childhood, and
oh,
then we've got to remember the point. It can be quite a lot to remember. Uh, it's not easy to do.
okay.
Uh, but my aim, my ambition is that I I've taught people kinesiology. I'm teaching more people foundation kinesiology and also full practitioner kinesiology. So the aim would be that there'll be more kinesiologists in Cornwall for one, and then it's not my job to teach the rest of the UK, but other people are out there teaching other people in the UK. And I think because people are becoming a bit more jaded about Western allopathic medicine sometimes and because it's so difficult to get an appointment sometimes that they're seeking out other ways of healing. I think particularly in some areas of the country, people are more open to certain things. So yeah, I do see more kinesiologists, more of a well-known thing. And therefore, if more people know kinesiology and more people are receiving kinesiology, then the world will be a better place.
Absolutely. Yes, no, very well said. I have the same feeling about meditation, calmer people, more people who recharge themselves, less anger, less emotional charge and things. So yeah, I think that's a brilliant, brilliant goal and ambition, and I wish you all the best with it. This this has been a fantastic conversation. You have shared so much, and yes, there is detail, but all of it, hopefully, is as people will find as sparkly and as exciting as I have. Um, Please, can you tell my listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, so my website is www.mindforhealth. So that's MINDFOR health.co.uk. If you go on Google and just put in kinesiology Cornwall, it'll probably be the first thing that turns up. And I'm on Instagram, Mindfeld Cornwall, and also I don't know when you're putting this out, but I'm doing another talk in Sprout Health Foods, which is in Newquay in Cornwall, on the 5th of March, 6:30. It's £5 a ticket. You can go online on my website and book there, or you can call them up if you live in Cornwall and know where it is. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Super. Well, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. Take
All
care.
right. Okay.
Just
Thanks very much. Take care.